Hello, everyone, and you're welcome to this exciting session on leadership and diversity with a focus on women in occupational safety and health. I'm delighted to welcome a fantastic and inspiring panel that will be contributing to this session. Now, we've got not just one, but two incredible hosts for this panel discussion. We've got Louis Hosking, who is IOSH President-elect, and Fumi Adegbola, the CEO of CTS Global. Joining them are Busola Alofe, the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, and Cynthia Zobu, a Chartered IOSH member and practitioner at Dangote Industries Limited. We also welcome Arif Zaman, the Executive Director of the Commonwealth Business Women's Network. He's the only male on the panel, and I look forward to hearing his contribution. We've got Florence Anyani, the HSC manager at Cummins, Ghana, and IOSH's first female chartered member in Ghana. I'm looking forward to this particular panel discussion, and I know that a lot of people in the audience are as well. So hand over to the IOSH President-elect, Louis Hosking. Joy. Over to you, Louis.
Thank you so much, Temi, for that warm introduction. My name is Louise Hosking, President-elect of IOSH, the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, and I'm delighted to be here today. As you know, IOSH is the chartered global body and the world's largest membership organisation for health and safety professionals, with over 47,000 members in around 130 countries, all working in nearly every sector. Our vision is to achieve a safer, healthier world of work for everyone. This year, we were delighted to receive the designation of an accredited Commonwealth organisation, which means we are directly recognised across 54 governments over 6 continents. I'm honoured to be here today, and thank you for organising this fantastic conference and inviting us to discuss this important topic. During this discussion, we will have an opportunity to consider where the world is now following a seismic change and disruption caused by the pandemic, and the many strengths in diversity that offer answers to the challenges that we face in our working world. We know that the pandemic has disproportionately burdened women. Globally, gender equality is one of the UN's life-enhancing sustainability development goals, seen as a fundamental human right and a foundation for a peaceful, prosperous and sustainable world. Greater diversity, equality and representation in workplaces worldwide is not just the morally right thing to do, it also makes smart business sense as these organisations in turn become more sustainable. Quite simply, we can create better ways of working for everyone. So health and safety is a predominantly male profession. So how did I get here? I came from a very traditional household and there were no grand expectations for me as a young woman. I was expected to leave school early and stay where I grew up, but I had a strong support network around me, which made the difference I needed to succeed. They showed me I could achieve more with an education. So I studied hard and I achieved the grades I needed to go on to university. Since then, I've worked hard, been reliable, committed, and had a passion for finding new ways to work and make work safer and healthier, combined with a curious mind for business, so that they in turn become efficient and supportive places to be. Having opportunity and encouragement to succeed is powerful. I've been a member of IOSH since 1999 and have reached a point where I knew it was important for me to give back and support others. I led one of our branches for very many years, growing it from a small network with low attendance at meetings and to become a vibrant hub of support where everyone feels connected, welcome and included. In helping this branch become more inclusive, valuing talent in diversity and encouraging women to do well, I saw the community flourish. I was elected to Vice President of IOSH in 2017 and President-elect in 2020. I will become President this autumn and the 7th female President in our 76-year history, but still the only woman out of 9 in our presidential team. Even now, a recent survey of IOSH members showed that only 21% are female and 79% are male. The statistics for the West Africa network is the same as this. Now, this figure has barely changed since I joined 22 years ago. However, our future leaders community is much more balanced in all aspects. So we need to invest in and encourage their diversity, then create a clear pipeline for success. And this will enable women to succeed where this is their ambition. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to Funmi.
Thank you very much, Louise, for that. And also a big thank you to Temi for a great job so far. Good afternoon to everyone and welcome to the Women in OSH segment of the IOSH West Africa Conference 2021, where the focus this year is on promoting leadership diversity. I am indeed really privileged for the opportunity to discuss this pertinent topic and more taking the continental perspective, which is from Africa. So if my slides could come on at this point, I'd really appreciate that. Yes, next slide, please. Thank you. Great. So where do we start from? Great question. As I said before, I will be taking an African perspective to today, whilst I align it as well with international challenges or international counterparts, as it were. In recent years, there has been increasing interest in the concept of employment equity and workplace diversity around the world. And so as professionals of various fields today, we have a very rich panel, as you have already heard. We hope today's discussion will help shed some light on how to best manage the increasingly diverse and often disadvantaged employee groups in the talent market and society at large. Arguably, the point that employment equity and diversity may have different meanings and interpretations across cultures and countries. So if we look at the stats, with about 54 countries, over 1 billion people, and we can see male to female ratio, it's no doubt, from research here that within the formal sphere, African women hold only 40% of formal jobs, which has led to a labor gender gap of 54%. And this labor gender gap is equivalent to, we can see the figures there. That's a lot of money. We're talking billions of dollars lost in economic growth because women cannot fully contribute to economic growth. And that indeed is a concern for me and of course for our institute as a whole, hence the reason why this is a topic for discussion today. Right, so I'm going to be piecing it down. Africa is quite large as a continent, so I will also be using Nigeria as a base, as a case study. So building on this contextualized approach, my presentation seeks to provide some insight on how equality laws and diversity management are being understood and implemented in Africa. Gender inequality is rife in Nigeria, and I'm sure across Africa at large. Going back to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Index, which benchmarks national gender gaps on economic, political, education, and health, it speaks very largely to this challenge, which that is, of course, women are also very underrepresented in the management cadre of private organizations and in general across board. So, if women are, and agree with me, that they are strong workers, artistic in nature, we have a great sense of humor. Louise has just said what a challenge it was when she came into the profession many, many years ago, going into a male-dominated space. And you can just imagine the level of sense of humor you've got to be able to work, thrive, and succeed today. And no wonder she is the incoming president. Once again, congratulations, Louise. And of course, we are resilient. So despite all of these attributes, if we move on to the next slide very quickly, my question then begs, the question begs why? Why are women still underrepresented at the board level, despite some improvements observed in few countries? At the level of executive committees, the situation is even less encouraging. So the lowest rates for women at this level are purely based on research so far, Asian countries, and of course with Japanese companies as well. However, even Sweden, that's actually tabled down as the highest performing country in this respect, has only 21% of women in company executive committees. I mean, these numbers are quite staggering and concerning, which of course, got me thinking, why? Why is the case, particularly in Africa? From research, all I can see is that history, geography, religion, and culture are major influences on leadership diversity in Africa, and I believe as well beyond Africa. So, which today I'm sure with our rich panel, we're going to be able to demystify, and we're going to be able to dissect even further what are the leadership challenges, leadership diversity challenges that we face across board. But like I said, looking particularly from an African perspective, we have attitude and cultural beliefs. And what I've found since working in Africa is, of course, there's this perception that women are homemakers, and unfortunately, whether we like it or not, it would so happen that we still have decision makers, our male counterparts who are traditionalists and very embedded in this culture mindset. And of course, with that, it can be a challenge to have women rise to leadership. It would be a challenge to even have sponsors or even supporters within organization. We also have inadequate laws as well. So, there are some countries that do have legislation, and whether or not it's actually there's compliance or there's any policing of it is another thing, which I'm sure in the discussion today, areas from our panelists would touch very broadly to these points. Again, corporate culture, where you have culture in the organization where employees, particularly female, have to ask themselves questions, does the culture, is it compatible with the gender diversity agenda, or is diversity a core value in many companies, including the companies some of our women are working at today? And of course, as well, where performance means sacrifices in personal life, these are things that women have got to contest with in today's, in previous past and even today. Another challenge is perception. So again, like I said earlier on, where there is a culture in an organization, these women are less likely to want to put themselves forward for leadership role, and of course, not move forward. And then we've got desire versus confidence. So some women will have the desire to want to pursue a career in pursue leadership roles, but they don't have the confidence. And I'm sure, like I said earlier on, with our rich panel, we'll be able to touch on this. And we even have some who don't even have the desire at all. The question as well is why. And again, we'll be able to demystify this in greater detail. And lastly, we've got poor implementation of comprehensive ecosystem. And I say this is where there is no commitment from, top management to drive the agenda of diversity, or it's not expressed as a top priority for them as a company, or perhaps even not set an enabling environmental support in place for gender diversity in the workplace. So these are just little points that I've been able to pick up, in working in Africa, living in Africa, supporting Africa by virtue of my role in the IOSH Council, that, are actually barriers to leadership diversity. So I'll be happy to move on to the last slide, just before I hand over to our panelists. So the question here is climbing the leadership ladder to success. How can we climb the leadership ladder to success? I have some thoughts, but again, I don't want to hear just my voice alone. I think it's time to hear that of other people on this panel today. So thank you very much. And I hope that set the tone and got our minds going. And I look forward to a fantastic session. So I'm going to hand over to Louise at this point. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wimney, and what a great introduction. So we're going to have a fantastic discussion with our panelists today, and we're going to start by asking everybody the same question. So I'm going to come to Bisola first of all, and that question is, please highlight from your perspective and experience, what are the key challenges to increasing diversity of the workforce in occupational safety and health, and more broadly to have greater visibility of representation of female role models in leadership positions? So each of our panelists is going to reflect on that question. And Basola, I'm going to come to you first of all.
Okay, thank you very much, Louise, for that. And thanks to Fumi for your opening presentation. Let me start my response by talking about unconscious. These are underlying attitudes and stereotypes that are unconsciously attributed to another person or group. And it has to do with our experiences, our backgrounds, our beliefs, and so on. And it also connects with us having positive views, therefore, about others because we feel they are like us. Now, having said that, we all know that fundamentally, women are different than men, and vice versa, of course. And thus, unconscious biases, they are part of this landscape of diversity and inclusiveness in OSH that we are talking about, looking at gender diversity. So what then are some of the issues we have here? And, I'll share a few of my thoughts. It's already been said that in the OSH space, it's often about quite high risk activity areas. And those industries and activities have traditionally tended to be male dominated environments, oil and gas, and those kinds of jobs. So therefore, the pipeline to women in leadership is already somewhat problematic from that perspective. In addition, I can mention that data that I have also seen in these areas to show at the graduate entry point into careers, quite a large proportion of female talent coming into the pipeline. However, what happens as life happens to people and women in this case cycle, when they get to childbearing age, we start to see that proportion of female to male thin out. And if we don't have a rich enough population in the middle of the pipeline, it's going to be rather difficult to get a large enough proportion at the top in leadership positions. And then, that's general. So lace on top of that the fact that we're talking about traditionally male-dominated OSH environments. That's challenging. In Fumi's presentation, she talked about the African culture, where women very much generally expected to be more quiet, less visible than their brothers, than their husbands, than their male colleagues at work. So these are all things that the female potential leader is faced with on that to leadership that we must really, really look into. And there is therefore some tension between what these deeply held cultures expect and what the world of work would need in women. What are some of the things we should do? From the cradle, we've got to really start from the cradle. With our female children, when they're learning, we shouldn't just stick them into the traditional type roles. Oh, you'll be a cook, you'll be a nanny. Why can't she be a pilot? Why can't she be the safety lead while she's role playing in primary school? I think that starts to really embed some different in the child, in the parents, and in all of the support system around the child as that child grows and develops. It's also important that they are given the confidence to go study those historically, in quotes, challenging disciplines. I talked about role playing as a pilot, role playing as an engineer. We've got to get more female children into those types of professions in terms of education, such that they graduate and they can feed into the pipeline that's going into those careers in the world of work. And as research has shown that balanced, gender diversified team deliver higher performance and better bottom line impact. It's very, very important because there is a strong business case to pull through are high-performing women from the entry level into the middle of the pipeline and on into leadership positions. So sponsorship actions, deliberate sponsorship actions help. I'm going to pause there, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Basola, thank you so much for that introduction, which is fantastic. And I couldn't agree more. Those pipelines from our future leaders into leadership roles, we need to support that, and we need to show those amazing role models and create that visibility. So I'm going to hand over to my co-host now for me to introduce our next guest, who's going to answer the same question.
Thank you very much, Louise. And honestly, it's already an exciting session so far. I think one thing I've taken away from Basola's session is start from the cradle. It's so important. If we're going to embed a different thinking, we've really got to start from basics. So that's amazing. And of course, it brings me nicely to introduce Cynthia Azobu, who is a professional in the OSH space, and I think it would be lovely to hear from a professional perspective, an OSH professional perspective. So yeah, I would be willing to bring on Cynthia at this stage. Cynthia, what are your thoughts on this same question?
Thank you, Fumi, for that introduction and all the discussion I've been having on this platform before now. But from the professional perspective, I will want to start off by shedding more light on what diversity really means, so that we do not look at the numbers to stipulate that that's diversity. So I looked through the statistics from Bureau of Labor Statistics at their data for comparing the men to women ratio in February 2010. And they recorded that nearly women in the US working is about 74 million, and that's about 47% of the workforce in the civilian space in the US. And that's to tell you that we have a lot of women who are actually out there working, and it is nearing the number of men, so to say. Now, the question for me to everyone is, what's diversity? Because there is this misconception about diversity that it has to be just having numbers, but really diversity is about acknowledging and understanding, accepting and valuing the difference in people. And there, in this topic, we are looking at inherent diversity that has to do with gender, women and men. So I am going to share from the professional perspective some of the challenges that we have faced as women in OSH profession. One thing that is very clear is that the safety OSH profession is seen or believed to be a field for men. And it is looked at the women are the people with a weaker ability to manage the risk that of the profession exposes either of us. So the question is this really the truth? I remember about 10 years ago when I tried to go into occupational health and safety, and that's about my personal exposure to work, and it led me to look at going into a more preventive focused kind of medical management or health hazard management in the workspace. And I came to realize that in those field of occupational health and safety, women currently have a lot of things to bring to the table because the risk they are exposed to vary from that of men. And if you want to have a workplace that is safe and sound, you have to bring everybody to the table to bring about their own separate perspective in addressing different risks and hazards we face in the organization. Now, one of the biggest challenge to having women in this profession, I think, is a gap in education. A lot of people, when they start in their high degree, in their first degrees, or even in college, they do not even understand that this profession is open to both genders. They feel that it's a profession, either they do not understand it, or they feel that is a profession made for the male genders, right? So, but the thing I think we have to really address is to look at how we can incorporate incorporate the safety and OSH knowledge or education into the curriculum, both in primary school. I'm happy to say that in Africa, we have professionals who have actually dedicated themselves at looking at occupational health and safety in primary school, so as to incorporate this knowledge, this flair. Maybe a child can actually start looking at going towards this profession in order to ensure that we have a safe place, a safe work, a safe operation, and everybody goes home safely. Another big challenge is that in Africa, from my perspective, they feel, aside the cultural impact, that they believe that a particular position is meant for the male genders. But if you look at if you look very well into the whole horizon of what we have in Africa, there is a cultural impact in get allowing women get to a particular position. That brings me to the question: do organizations actually, in the real sense, want to implement diversity as part of their strategic plan in driving productivity in their organization? And one of the big challenges organizations face is implementing the real diversity. The question again is, do organizations have policies that avert maybe preventing a female getting a particular position in their organization? Do they have policies that support diversity? Are they committed to actually implementing diversity? Because diversity is very good in paper, but implementation is where the work is. So at this point, I want to pause here as I hand back to Fumi, and I'm going to come back to talk about the way forward on this topic. Thank you very much, Fumi. The floor is yours now.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. And I think it's so important really to truly define what diversity is. And I like your definition. It's beyond the numbers. It's also in accepting the difference in people. And I can see a thread actually as we move across, you know, from hearing from Busola, myself so far, even Louise, there is a thread going across, you know, which is catching them young and embedding this narrative change that we want to see from you know, a primary stage. So including role play, embedding into curriculum, educational curriculum. I think we're doing great, and I'm hoping that before and by the end of the session, we should have a way forward on how we can definitely promote leadership diversity. On that note, I'd love to hand over back to Louise at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I love the discussion there about walking the talk, because I think that organizations probably do know and understand, you know, the value of having all of this in their organizations. But actually, is it that tick box exercise, or are they actually walking the talk? So, and it would be great to hear from our audience as well. So feel free to message in as we do that too. So I'm delighted to bring in our next speaker, who is Arif Zaman from the Commonwealth Women's Business Network. So Arif, if you're online, it's fantastic to have you, and I'm going to ask you the same question as well.
Well, Louise, can I just say I'm delighted to be with you. Yes, Arif Zaman from the Commonwealth Business Women's Network. I'm not a woman, as you may have noticed, but I'm the only man in the team. Both
and our male allies are very important in this work Louise, that we're doing.
You said it, and you're number 7. My goodness, the 7th woman to be the president. I mean, what a powerful story. I'm sure that we could have many more over the years, but that's such a strong message to put out there to women in leadership. And I think that's part of what I'd like to say something about. But before I say anything else, I'd just like to play a short video of no more than about a minute, which was produced by the UK government when it hosted the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2018. The UK government, through Prime Minister Boris Johnson, is still the chair of the Commonwealth. So we'll play this for you now. So that gave you a bit of an overview of the Commonwealth and its power and its potential. But it also is home to 44% of the world's poorest women. We also know that there is a Commonwealth advantage here, was mentioned in that video, of there's a reduced cost of doing business amongst the Commonwealth countries when any two Commonwealth countries do business with each other, of about 20%. And we also know that the amount of trade within the Commonwealth countries, despite the pandemic, in fact, even before the pandemic, has been increasing in that period. But the question is, what does this mean for women, and particularly women in leadership, Louise? And I think this is a really important discussion. It's so important that we're having this discussion today. The IOSH, in terms of its focus in this area, is really very much welcome. In West Africa, we have a number of Commonwealth countries in West Africa, the Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, for example, but a range of Commonwealth countries. We did some work with another professional body, the ACCA, some time earlier, when we were asked this question for the Commonwealth Women's Affairs Ministers when they met. And we produced a report jointly with ACCA, the professional accounting body for accountants. And I just want to draw upon that to home in on 3 areas which can answer your question. And I think they're still very relevant. So one of the areas is around, to answer your question, what can be done in this area? The Commonwealth Business Women's Network, I'll play at the end a short video that describes what we're about, but we're really at our heart, about encouraging, empowering, and embedding women's economic empowerment and women in trade through doing 3 things: through trade, talent, and training. But in our focus around leadership, 3 areas I think are really important. One is sponsorship. I mean, I think supporting sponsoring initiatives is really important in creating consistent levels of quality in the sponsoring process. There's a lot of talk on mentoring, but sponsorship is really important, and there's a lot of potential to share best practice more across different regions. Clearly, we also see that sponsorship opportunities could be enabled where possible by crossing sectoral and even geographical boundaries, and providing cross-fertilization of ideas and experiences. And I think IOSH has got a great opportunity to drive greater focus in that area. The other is what I referred to earlier, Louise. It's raising career aspirations. I really hope that every girl in the Commonwealth hears about you and knows that the president of the IOSH is a woman, and that's really important in terms of raising career aspirations for girls in school and women in work, and also encouraging the greater proportion of women in non-traditional areas, whether it's in oil and gas, whether it's in media, or other areas as well. So I think this is the other areas, raising career aspirations. We've been doing a lot of work in the last couple of years with the global mobile phone industry body, the GSMA, to address this, particularly in the tech industry or the tech area. But we feel there's a lot more work to be done in that area. And then I think the third key thing really goes back to, Louise, what you said about the Commonwealth, the potential of sharing best practice across the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth provides an incredible laboratory and opportunity to do this. And we've been having discussions with IOSH and have identified, some obvious areas where we could work around. And just to sort of signpost this to you in terms of leadership, if we look at women and occupational health and safety, one of the areas in the Commonwealth where we feel there's been particular vulnerability is for women journalists. Women working often on the front line in challenging situations, particularly in the last 18 months beyond that. So we think that there's a real opportunity to work in that area as well. I think the work you do on corporate risk in terms of some of your work and training is also a great example of where we could strengthen that potential for leadership as well. And I think also look at some of your experiences in terms of progressing in the profession and working with different countries and on the policy front. So I think there's a lot that can be done, but I think it begins with the family, and it begins with IOSH joining the Commonwealth family, which, as you mentioned, Louise, you did earlier this year by becoming accredited. And we're, as the leading organization in the Commonwealth family that work with women in business, we're delighted to be working with you and making this happen more quickly, more easily, not just for women, but for girls as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, it's a massively exciting time for us at IOSH. At a phenomenal time in history, I think, as well.
There was just that video. My apologies to cut you into. There was just that video that I can just play now, no more than a minute, that sort of summarizes the work of the Commonwealth Business Women's Network. So I'll just play that. We can just cue that in now.
Thank you so much, Arif, and that's a great introduction as well to the work that we are doing with our Commonwealth colleagues. And I couldn't agree with you more. We do talk about mentoring a lot, and we've got a fantastic mentor platform for our members, which if you haven't explored that, do explore that. And perhaps we will discuss some more the differences between mentorship and sponsorship, which I completely agree are massively important. So thank you, Arif, and I'm looking forward to more of the conversation. I'm going to hand back to my co-hosts to introduce our last panelist for their introduction.
Thank you very much, Louise. And that was an amazing submission, actually, from Arif. You know, importance of sponsorship. We can't overemphasize that. It's, again, IOSH walking the talk in the sense that collaboration is another thing, you know, collaborating with different partners such as the Commonwealth. And, you know, we see that even with the Commonwealth as well, collaborating with ACCA and IOSH. I think this is great times that we're definitely in, actually. And so it brings me nicely, again, I seem to be bringing onto the stage professional colleagues, you know, another seasoned OSH professional. Again, just to remind you, this is for West Africa. So we heard from Cynthia, who spoke about the challenges and who spoke about her experience from Nigeria. And to bring on now is Florence. Florence is going to be speaking. Florence Anyane. When we're talking leadership, actually, I need to quickly actually emphasize this. If you see those acronyms, SIM IOSH, you know, you saw it behind Cynthia's name, now again next to Florence's name. These are not just ordinary acronyms, they're chartered. It means they're a chartered member of the Institute. And so when we're talking about leadership as well, they sit in leadership position as well. So you are welcome, Florence. Let's hear from Ghana and see, you know, let's learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Femi. Thank you so much. It's another opportunity to be participating in IOSH conference again. I had the opportunity last year, and it's another opportunity. Let's go straight to the topic for the day: diversity and inclusion. I always define diversity as a binding glue of life. A binding glue of life in that in many things. Living organisms, if they don't have what they have, if they don't have arms, or, you know, like a human being, you have only arms, you don't have legs, you can't function well. You have head, you don't have body, you can't function well. It makes all these things makes up a full human being. So to be diversified is very important in every human being's life, and to also be in the known of what you are doing, you need to be all weather. And when it comes to occupational health and safety, I always say it is dynamic. in that day in, day out, we get to meet different things happening in the environment. We didn't expect coronavirus. Now we're in the season where coronavirus has become part of our living. What do? We need to manage it. So when we talk about occupational health and safety, it's dynamic. Every time things change. And the question is, for women across, let me bring it down to Ghana. Young ladies in Ghana, the question I ask is, why do you go into safety? Is it for the passion, or because there's no job, or you think there's a likelihood that you can get a job in that area? Why do you go into health and safety? Many a times the response I get is not really encouraging. So what happens at the end of the day? The question is, a lot of people are not passionate into entering this field, and when the passion is not there, it is difficult to drive the role as an occupational health and safety professional. Way back, what drove me into safety back in the mines was just seeing an injury with my eye that was almost a fatality. And having an environmental background where I have to go into safety, I said, okay, what can I do to help human beings working in this part of the world or in this part of the sector? That is what drove my passion into safety 10 years ago. And it has really brought me this far, because the passion to help, the zeal to be able to ensure that people come to work and go back home safely is always what drives me to go further and further. And I talk about safety being dynamic. How do you get to know what is happening, the trend around the world? The question is, you have a lot of young women. I always say you have to learn, you have to open up, ask questions, attend seminars, attend conferences. I'm so happy that every year IOSH bring up this conference, and it's not expensive. Particularly this, it's not in another country where you have to pay plane ticket and all that. It's free. So these are the opportunities you get to be able to know what is happening. What are the new things you can add? What skill can you add to your industry or to wherever you're working to ensure a safe working environment for you and your colleagues? So at the end of the day, you have all these things. You have to expose you. The exposure is there. You need to open up to be able to understand how you can make use of this exposure to be able to help people within your organization, within your country, within your community, to ensure everyone is safe. You cannot be in a corner and expect to know what is trending. If you do not open up to understand what is trending, at the end of the day, you will not know how to solve issues or how to solve problems, because a little here, a little there helps you to be able to understand the perspectives of what is expected of you. If you do not put this together, and if you do not understand what is happening in the global trend of occupational safety and health, you will just be lost. The passion should also be a factor. You enter into the profession, as I always tell ladies in the industry in Ghana, you do not sit there and say, I'm okay here. You cannot be okay. Just a little course, a certificate course, a seminar, a conference, try to ask questions, be involved, get to know what is happening. The environment is dynamic. Anything can happen. We didn't expect COVID. COVID has come in. In most organizations, there's the occupational health and safety professionals who handle the issues of COVID. So if you don't ask, if you don't try to further your education, to understand, attend seminars, attend conferences, how then do you get to solve problems when they hit you? In our part of the country, unlike those days where women are confined in the kitchen, it is no longer like that. There are a lot of women in the industry, in various roles in industries. And I must say, in Ghana, we have a lot of women going into the occupational health and safety industry, and the passion to drive the role is also there. But at the end of the day, who do they look up to ensure that they are actually doing it the right way or following the right path? You see people call you, they send you their CVs. I need a job. I look at the nature of courses they've done, and I'm like, you just don't take a course. You have to know the course you're doing, the content of the course, the trainer, and the background of the trainer is very, very important, because whatever course you do is an impact you're bringing upon yourself. So to grow in this profession, there are so many ways you need to get yourself prepared to be able to get there. I am not there yet, so I'm learning. There's always a lot for me to add up to what I already have. And the question is, in most industries, do they have a diversity and inclusion program for all, especially women? And you come here and you see that a lot of organizations do not have this. So where do you stand as a lady if you occupy a role expecting to rise the rank to becoming a manager? Fortunately, in some companies like Cummins, there's diversity and inclusion, where, irrespective of your gender, if the role you are fit for it, there is nothing like discrimination. But how about the others? Where do you stand? If you don't get yourself to that level where you fit in for that role, it will definitely be difficult. So you have to really get yourself out there, understand what is happening, attend seminars as much as you can, attend conferences, ask questions, get to know what is happening, because safety, I always say, is dynamic. It is not always what we know yesterday. Things change the following day. So maybe in the next session, I'll come up with what do we do, or how do we go forward from here. Thank you for me.
Thank you so much, Florence. And I think that was quite powerful. I like your catch there, binding glue of life, and the passion will be the key driver in terms of, success and moving up the ladder. But one of the key things that I quite found that was profound that you focused on, because we can make so much noise about diversity and all and what have you, but then if we don't have the capacity, then there isn't any bias, so to say, because you're not fit for the role. So I think there's an emphasis that you made there that I quite align with, that even as women, there's the good power of sponsorship, mentorship, but we definitely need to build our capacity so that we are also right for whatever role or progression that we're looking for in our career space. So I think thank you very much, Florence, for that. That was really, really great. And of course, I've got my co-host back, Louise. Wow, wow, wow. What an awesome session.
What an amazing start to this session that we're having. And I love that there's been so many strong key messages. I think one of the things, I don't know about you, I'm hearing through here is around visibility. And, this is kind of a shout out, I think, from us, isn't it? Is that, I hear a lot that women kind of need that, which is what you presented in your first slides, is that you need that confidence to say that you can do this. So I guess this is kind of a call out to say, you can do it. And being in health and safety is not just about technical knowledge, it's about the way that we apply ourselves. So soft skills for me are not soft, they're power skills. And so I heard of all of that, and I love what Florence was saying about the fact that it's just these small changes that we can make, and it's the ripple effect that's so important. So some really powerful messages there. I think that we're going to now go over to some questions and some questions that we have in from the audience.
Absolutely. People are bursting. I'm bursting. I've got questions. So it is indeed question time. Thank you very much once again to all our panelists. And we're looking forward to your additions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing, wasn't it? And we've just had some fantastic chat as well in the chat box. And apologies for the technical hitches right at the start, which is going to scrunch up the time that we have for the chat, but just keep it coming and keep rolling while we are on. But there's been some really fantastic questions. And one of the questions that I picked out that I'd really like to pose to you, Arif, is around male allies. So involving all genders in this debate is super important, isn't it? And Arif, I don't know if you want to say something about male allies.
Well, thank you very much, Louise, and it's a very important question, and I'm going to be very specific in my response because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot since you became accredited, and I'd like to kind of put this back to you in a sense. In one way, there's a lot of attention being given to risk right now, both in the boardroom, of course, in the work that you do, and there's a course that you do which has been very male dominated probably ever since it started, which is your Corporate Risk Essentials course. When I say male dominated, probably, I don't have the stats, but I expect probably more men than women have been on the course. But one of the things that there's been an increasing recognition of is that this needs a gender lens. You know, we need to think of this also with a gender lens, because if you're a woman in a boardroom, and I've seen this myself, if you're a woman in the boardroom and you have issues that you want to raise to do with risk, there's a different dynamic that can come into play. So I think that's a really good example of where you have a really strong initiative, your Corporate Risk Essentials course. You can draw along, you know, upon the work that you've already been doing for some time, which may have been sort of male, you know, dominated for whatever reason, but you could think about what does this mean now, looking, you know, to the future. And you've got incredible talent in the community, the IOSH community, but maybe bringing that gender lens in is something to think a little bit more. But it could be in terms of content, it could be in terms of participation, it could be in terms of engagement, whatever it is. But I think that's the way to do it. But that really is a way of bringing together the men and the women in your community for greater collective impact.
Thank you so much. And personally, you know, there's a within the health and safety community, there are active men who are promoting this. And I think sometimes when a great discussion I heard from somebody is that, you know, it's not that fear of if we promote women and support women, we're going to take something away, because it's going to raise everybody up. And we just need to create more opportunity. But thank you for that. I'm going to hand over to Funmi, because we're being told we've got to be quick. So Funmi, over to you, because I know you've pulled out some questions that you've really liked.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Louise, and good afternoon, everyone. Amazing feedback there, actually, Arif. So I'm going to move on to the next question, and I think this would be very much apt for our professionals to hear from them, particularly from a geographical perspective, because I know the challenges that we're posed with, you know, can also vary depending on where we are. So the second question is, what are the practical ways to increase women participation in OSH in our region, and that's Africa? So it would be lovely to hear from Cynthia as well as Florence, but particularly without, the question says, without also compromising competence, especially presently when it is obvious that we have few women in OSH leadership roles. So this is a good one for both of you. Like I said previously, you are chartered members, so please go ahead. Over to you, Cynthia. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Funmi, for that. And I'm going to be very practical here. And I see it as my responsibility as a woman who is in OSH profession and a chartered for that level of commitment and leadership. One thing I want to do, because I will start speaking with myself and being responsible, is to increase mentorship, is to give out what I know to women, to encourage women that they can do this if they have a flair for occupational safety and health. First of all, I have to put out myself there to mentor as much as possible women that will want to be in this profession. What do I mean? I can volunteer to go to the grassroots to train the young ones that are coming up. They may have to learn about OSH profession just at the cradle, and then maybe, who can tell, they may just have a flair for it and then opt for that. And you see them grow through it. Somebody saw me go through or mentored me through charter level, and I can also do that for somebody. I can teach them what I know at that level and then see them through and give all the support they will need. Secondly, I will also want to encourage a practical way is also where I have influence in leadership. I will want to see where I will support policies that encourage helping women to get to this level. By so doing, I also want to crave on the indulgence of our female colleagues in order to see us as stakeholders and see us as people who are collaborating to help in ensuring occupational health and safety in the workplace and society at large. So at this point, I want to hand over to Fumi for other persons.
Thank you very much for that, Cynthia. I'm really conscious of time because we've got the placards up behind the scenes saying
we're trying to wrap us up.
But can I ask, Florence, I think it'd be fair to get a perspective from Ghana, for example, and if you don't mind, maybe in about 30 seconds, because I also have one more question for Mrs. Alofe, because we want to look at the human capital perspective in all of this as well. Thank you.
Okay, I will just make it brief. Cynthia has said what was in my mind, but just to add up to that, like she said, training is one point that you cannot ignore. Most women who want to go into this profession needs to be trained, and they need to be trained by the right professionals. I had to go into training NEBOSH, IOSH, and then other safety trainees because I realized that in Ghana we didn't have a lot of women trainers in this profession. And actually, I realized that anytime I'm doing this training, I have a lot of people registered for these trainings. However, beyond the trainees is practically who do they get to mentor. So you always have people call you, okay, I'm in this place, I'm doing internship, what should I be looking out for? Those are good questions you can be looking out for. You can be asking, what should you be looking out for? You are doing internship, it's a great opportunity, but as to what at all are you looking out for? How can you build yourself within 2 months, within 3 months that you are still in school but had the opportunity to come and have an internship done? So those are questions that you need to raise, and you need to raise it to the right people. And there are so many times I get this kind of questions via email, LinkedIn, Facebook, people calling me, WhatsApp groups, and then I just had to, in my own way, tell them exactly what they can do to upgrade their skill, upgrade themselves, and understand themselves as they grow in the profession of occupational safety and health. So for me, without much to add, I'll just stop it here.
Thank you so much for that, Florence. I really appreciate that. I'm going to jump in very quickly to Mrs. Alofe, looking amazing there and being the registrar for one of the most popular professional body for HR professionals in Nigeria. It's amazing to have you on. This question really is, it says in HSC, when you look at someone, what is the first thing you see? Please, over to you.
Thank you, Fumi. So when I look at someone, I see human capital, and capital can be invested in, should be invested in to generate and create value. When I look at myself in the mirror, I see someone that can achieve absolutely anything that I set my heart upon to achieve. So whether it's a human that is a male or a human that is a woman, that is capital that can be deployed, nurtured, built, developed to deliver value for the world at large. And so women on this call, you are capital, just go get it. Nothing stops us. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Louise.
Wow, that's brilliant. I just have to say thank you to Paul Cunningham, who said extend this for another 30 minutes, but Fumi and I are getting chased out the room. So what a fantastic session. Let's just, as a group of professionals, be visible, be accessible. Let's support each other. Forget about putting the ladder down for other women. Just pull up that net. Network across, that's where we're having this session. So network, reach out to other people, support one another, mentoring, sponsorship. And something with diversity, we make better decisions, and in health and safety, when we make better decisions, we save more lives. So thank you to the whole of this panel. I've got to go because they're going to pull the plug. So thank you and speak soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Cheers. Take care.